Hello everybody and welcome to the Import-Export Hub channel. My name is Bogdan and in today's episode I'm going to cover the topic of detention and demurrage. And frankly, I really don't know how familiar you are with this topic, but for me at least, at the beginning of my career in logistics, I have to confess that I did had some trouble understanding these two concepts. So it might seem trivial for some of you out there who have experience in the import-export flows, especially considering international maritime trade. So you can either skip watching the video or I don't know, maybe you want to refresh your memory. But at the same time, I really do hope that among you, there will be some of you who need to better understand how detention and demurrage works. And hopefully I will manage to do just that with the help of this video. And with this being said, before I deep dive into the subject here, my request for you guys, push the like and the subscribe buttons in order to smooth those index fingertips of yours, and of course to please YouTube's algorithm and help this channel grow and help the content of this channel reach other import-export enthusiasts on YouTube. So anyways, let's get back to my presentation, as these two terms sometimes confuses people involved in international global trade, and I've said it, I was one of those people, and extrapolating, I guess that there are others who have the same issue as well, so that's why I'm making this particular video. So basically, detention and demurrage charges occur when you fail to return or pick up the container. This is the very basic description on how detention and demurrage works. Now, to put a little bit of context here, I have to tell you that almost all the shipping lines in the world allow shippers some free days in order to organize their shipment, from picking up the empty container to loading it, making the shipping instructions, the VGM, the customs clearance, to gate in and deliver the full and loaded container back to the terminal. Now, the amount of the free time and detention and demurrage charges depend on the shipping line, on the equipment time, and of course the port or the terminal involved. From the day you exceed your number of free days, detention and or demurrage charges will be added for each day until you pick up or deliver the container. Now, considering that I do this video in the context of these huge freight rates and huge profits for the shipping lines, you might think that these charges might seem unjust or unreasonable, but in fact, they are in practice for quite some time, because detention and demurrage charges mostly serve two main purposes. And one will be that it needs to compensate the shipping line for the use of its container. It's perfectly understandable. The second works like an incentive for the merchant to return an empty container in order to achieve a fast turnaround rate, because an idle or a blocked container is not making any money for the shipping line if it's not repositioned in the depot waiting for a new customer, or I don't know, is not repositioned in another part of the world where containers are desperately needed, as in the case right now with China, for example. Anyways, before thinking that this is another way for the shipping lines to get more money out of your pocket, and by the way, I'm not saying that you shouldn't think that, you should know that the revenues generated by the detention and demurrage charges, although might seem high for the small and medium importers or exporters, it's really peanuts to the shipping lines in relation with the revenues generated by freight. So anyways, coming back to the main purpose of trying me to give you some guidelines for detention and demurrage, you have to think like this, and it really helped me a lot. The demurrage charges relate to the time a container is inside the terminal. And on the other hand, detention is a charge for extended use of the container until it is returned to the shipping line, back to the terminal, back to the port, or back to the container depot. And I think we are ready to move on and try to dive a little bit more and hopefully manage to clear once and forever how detention and demurrage works. And for this, I've created a 2x2 matrix, as you can see here, considering both the import and export flows. And I will begin with the import flow. And here usually you have, I don't know, from 3 to 5 days free of charge after the container has been discharged from the vessel. And if you fail to pick up the container from the terminal within those 3 to 5 days window, you will pay demurrage for each additional day, and usually before you can pick up the container. As for detention, I've said it earlier, it refers to the time outside the port or outside the terminal. And if the consignee holds the container beyond the allowed 3 days, detention will be charged, and basically the detention is charged when the container has been picked up but not returned to the carrier's depot, and these charges are again I'm reminding you, are put in place as an attempt to decrease the turnaround time in order to make the shipping process more efficient, more smooth, and of course in order to make money by adding it back to the flow as soon as possible, as the shipping lines need to make money from those precious steel boxes. On the other hand, for the export flow, demurrage occurs when the container is in the terminal or ready to be gate in, but cannot be loaded on board the vessel because of a lack of proper documentation, missing VGM, or other non-carrier related errors. And in this case, the container won't be loaded on the scheduled vessel. It will have to wait until in the terminal until the proper documentation is in order and catch the next vessel. So in this case, demurrage is applied until the next scheduled vessel departs. Detention charges can also happen when you export containers, and a practical example is that the empty container has been picked up for loading and is not returned within the set 3 days. And in most cases, the shipping lines allows shippers 5 free days in order to pick up the container, load it, and of course return it full to the terminal. And you might ask yourselves how much can detention and demurrage charges can cost you. Well, again, this is relative to the shipping line for once, relative to the equipment type, and of course the terminal or the port. But in general, you can expect anywhere from 20 euros a day for a 20 feet freight all kind container to 80 euros a day for a 40 feet reefer container in the southern part of Europe. It might not sound much, but multiply with an average of, let's say, 2 days of demurrage times 10 containers each month, and at the end of the year you have more or less 5,000 euros or $7,000. And the strange thing about the detention and demurrage charges is that they can be easily prevented. And next I will point out a couple of ways in order to help you prevent these charges. The first one, my first recommendation will be to really know your contract and responsibilities, not only in relation with the shipping line or the freight forwarder, but also with the buyer or the seller, as different Incoterm rules have different obligations in terms of detention and demurrage. My second recommendation is that, if possible, try to pre-clear the customs and gain precious time here. Another recommendation, the third one, would be to have a backup inland truck carrier in order to try to plan ahead and not leave everything to the last minute in order to have a little bit of a time buffer in case something happens. And my fourth and last recommendation is to always keep in mind the loading and unloading times, and of course the cut-off days at the terminal for the VGM, for the shipping instruction, for the full gate in or gate out process. And I think that's it, guys. With this being said, my time is up. I really hope that I've managed to clear the topic of detention and demurrage. And don't be shy, by the way, comment in the section down below. And of course, I will highly appreciate if you will hit the like and the subscribe buttons as a token of your appreciation. And as always, until next time, keep your business safe. Thanks.